Hi there. Today we're taking you on a Transatlantic repositioning cruise. These are not like ordinary cruises for a couple of reasons. First off, you're sailing in one direction. That is, the ship keeps sailing pretty much constantly in one direction without doing them like the normal loop around the Caribbean, for instance. And second, it's the end of season, so weather can be changeable. And it certainly was for us. Anyway, we're sailing from Fort Lauderdale in Florida up to Barcelona in Spain. The cruise didn't go quite as we expected. We had originally planned to stop in the Azores. We didn't make it, but we stopped in Gibraltar instead. Anyway, tune in and see what we got up to. This cruise was taken in March of 2025, and it was a 13-night cruise. We sailed at one point, I think, non-stop for 7 nights at sea, and we had a couple of stops at the end in Spain. Before I forget, please subscribe. I think there's about 6 ships waiting to go out from Fort Lauderdale. Most of them are cruising south around the Caribbean, or the Caribbean, however you prefer. But we're heading northeast up to Bermuda. The weather here in Florida in springtime really is fantastic. It's 70s or high 20s, whichever way you prefer. They haven't opened the pool up yet, but everyone's on the deck chairs. So the ship we're on is the Celebrity Apex, and it has this thing called the flying carpet, I think it's called, which sticks out on the starboard side of the ship and can be lowered and raised. Here's some other footage I took during the cruise. It has a very nice set of archways on one floor, and then they drop this thing down to a lower level where you can dine in at a restaurant during the evening. I thought it was a bit corny at first, but got to love it during the cruise. One other feature on the Celebrity Apex is this running track, which goes most of the way around the ship. There is one area of the ship that is fenced off for premium passengers, but you don't feel hemmed in at all, and this running track is great for everyone. Plenty of places to stop off along the way if you feel like you need a champagne or some other health drink. But really is a nice track. One feature of repositioning cruises, which a lot of people don't realise before they get on, is that the ship is constantly heading in one direction. So if you have a cabin on the starboard side or on the port side, you'll get the sun the same time of the day. There's a bright side of the ship and a shady side of the ship. So be aware of that when you're booking your cabin. This is inside the magic carpet, and then this is a solarium. Very nice, and it was quite crowded most of the time, especially when we got into a little bit of choppy weather. It is a repositioning cruise, but all the restaurants were open. On the Apex, one of the premium restaurants is the Eden, which is down at the stern of the ship. And they have those huge glass windows that look out over the stern. Really is a beautiful place to hang out and watch the sea. There are some other videos on YouTube about showing this view in really rough weather. We didn't encounter any of that. It is always impressive being at the waterline and being able to check out the ocean. There's a great social area down the stern here with the Eden Bar and the Eden Restaurant. The Eden Restaurant has a lot of vegetarian focus. We didn't really eat there, but the bar itself is pretty nice. Moving from the stern to midships, there's the cocktail bar, which is pretty nice, and a dance floor. This is constantly busy. From Fort Lauderdale to Bermuda, everything was plain sailing. No rough weather. I think it took us about 4 days. So let's have a look at the rooms. We're on the 9th floor, just forward of midships, in a hedge stateroom with infinite veranda. We really like this room. It's very modern, and shower's great with good pressure. And the infinite veranda, we didn't know whether we'd like it at first or not, but and I know it's a little bit controversial, but we really did like it. It opened up at the touch of a button and closed during rough weather, so we liked it overall. Not sure if I mentioned it before, the steward was absolutely fantastic and saw to everything that we needed, and much better on one of the other cruise lines that we recently took, which was named after a Scandinavian country. Our first stop is the Royal Dockyards in Bermuda. This is off on a spit of land well away from the rest of Bermuda. Frankly, it does feel a little bit isolated. I think you can visit the town, but we chose to just hang around the naval dockyards because we'd visited Bermuda before. These ships really are impressive when you get up close, aren't they? This is a perfectly functional dockyard, and so a lot of cruising boats, and even this old historic boat. Yeah, I'm not quite sure what it's called. These courtesy shuttles can take you anywhere around the naval dockyards area. You do need to take a taxi if you want to go further into Hamilton or any of the other areas of Bermuda. The cooperage is obviously where, in past times, the Navy restocked all the Navy ships. Now it's a pub with a poop deck and a bunch of tourist shopping and everything. It's all very pleasant and a good place for a pint. So back on board and a bit of a stiff breeze. I guess we should have paid attention. This really is nice cruising, beginning of springtime. Plenty of sunshine at these latitudes. The longest leg of this transatlantic cruise is from Bermuda to the Azores, the Portuguese territory in the middle of the Atlantic. It's scheduled to take around 7 days, and it started off fine enough, but didn't take long after about the second or third day, I think it was, where it started to get a little choppy. The views from the stern at Eden were pretty fantastic, and there's no one on the running track. Even the bar at the Magic Carpet was without clientele. Even the stern bar, which was very popular earlier in the cruise, the chairs were all cabled up and really no one out and about. Everyone was down below, enjoying the rest of the ship. Now this sort of weather doesn't bother me too much, but you really have to ask yourself if you are going to do a transatlantic cruise, a relocation cruise, then are you up for this sort of weather? Because it is quite common, given that it's springtime. I think we're about 3 or 4 days out of Bermuda right now. I'm not sure how this guy got on board. So one thing about the inclement weather, of course, is that you get the walking track all by yourself. And the jacuzzis as well. Even the Germans weren't in the jacuzzi during this rough weather. So when the weather outside is really rough, what do? You go downstairs for some meals. So this is the Blue Restaurant. You need to be on a special aqua package in order to dine here, but there are plenty of other choices. Cyprus, which is Cypriot, of course. Cosmopolitan, which is French. Tuscan, I think you know where that's from. Italy, of course. And Normandy, another French. Was Cosmopolitan French? I think it was. Anyway, the food is great at all of them. They do share a kitchen between these 4 restaurants, so just be aware that there is some repetition. A buffet every day, fantastic, and cocktails. Also, this is a espresso cocktail from Baci, my buffet, and more cocktails. The martini bar puts on a pretty good show. It makes a pretty nice martini as well. Let's check it out. So it wasn't just the cocktails. The weather did cut up even worse, and we had to skip our stop at the Azores. That's something that can happen on these transatlantic cruises. So instead, we're going to be stopping in Gibraltar. I think at this stage we've been at sea for about 11 days with one stop in Bermuda. So we're pretty happy to get onto land. Gibraltar's a quirky sort of place, but as an ex-resident of Hong Kong myself, I sort of understood it. Perched on the edge of an empire, with clinging on to the British traditions, and a spectacular rocky outcrop and port. We didn't take a tour with the cruise line, we just walked into town and, following the guidebook advice, just booked one of the tours from people standing around in the main square there. Very, very easy and very reliable. Most of the tours seem to have much the same itinerary. I mean, Gibraltar is not that large after all. St Michael's Cave is on most trips. Certainly should be. There's also a trip up to the Skywalk Gibraltar and the Barbary macaques feeding station. I guess no trip to Gibraltar is complete without seeing the apes. Barbary macaques here in the sleety rain, not really enjoying themselves. I have to keep pinching myself that I'm not back in England, where this really is a little part of Britain down in the south of Spain. One thing that really surprised us was how cheap the souvenirs were. It really was tax-free and not gouging tourists at all, so some pretty good shopping. I spent a couple of hours in the shop before walking back to the ship. Yes, this isn't out of sequence. We're pulling into the pier in Gibraltar. Unfortunately, a passenger had a health event and was taken off the ship here, which delayed our departure by, I think, a couple of hours. However, we're only an overnight sailing away from our next stop, so no time was actually really lost. But cruising in the Mediterranean is much more enjoyable than the North Atlantic, I can tell you. So after a day in Gibraltar, we're cruising overnight to Palma, Mallorca. If you have this Valeria ferry, you can actually take one of those from Fort Lauderdale to the Bahamas. Check out my video on that. The cruise port isn't actually in the town, so we needed to take a short bus ride, but it took us to the Cathedral Basilica of Santa Maria. So this is a pretty impressive cathedral. It predates the Reconquista, when the Muslims were driven out of Spain, and very impressive inside. I don't know why, but I've always really enjoyed these enclosed courtyards that they have in Spain. Something about them just really agrees with me. From the cathedral, we head north to the main shopping areas. This place, of course, is a major European tourist hub, so a lot of shopping in Mallorca, and people come from all over Europe. This time of year as well, in springtime, it's a little early in the season, but still plenty of crowds around. Lots of exquisite European specialties here. Really is tempting to buy another suitcase and fill it up, although I'm not quite sure whether we're allowed to take any of this back to the United States. And of course we had to stop at a gelateria. One day doesn't seem enough to look around Palma and Mallorca. We thoroughly enjoyed our time there. We did manage to get back on the bus though, and not miss our ship. Beautiful Mediterranean weather. This really is so much nicer than cruising the North Atlantic looking for U-boats. So an early morning arriving into Barcelona, and very, very efficient port. They see a lot of cruise ships and no hassles whatsoever at the port. Very easy to get into town. And so we spent a few days here in Barcelona. That's the subject for another video. The repositioning cruise worth it? For me, absolutely. I totally loved it, and would definitely do it again. Much more enjoyable than a Caribbean cruise. Thanks for making it this far. Please do subscribe. It really helps me out. Thanks a lot.